And now for something completely different.
People, did you have to wear a slip growing up? Now, I didn't myself, but pretty much at least half of all Jehovah's Witnesses have to or had to wear slips growing up. There was a great post on the XJW subreddit a few days ago all about having to wear a slip growing up. I'm always keen to hear, since women have so little voice in the organization as Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm always interested to hear their thoughts and perspectives now that they can speak freely and share their thoughts. And so I thought we could just read some of the comments on this Reddit post. So the original comment is from the user Set Free by Creativity with the title, "Ladies, this one's for you." She writes, "I was cleaning out my sock drawer and came across some old slips. I haven't walked inside the Kingdom Hall since before COVID. I was appalled at the sight and the touch. I can't believe I went to great lengths out of my way to find these things, to be the perfect length with the dress and all that went into the outfit just to come home feeling desperate, disappointed, and judged. Thank God those days are over." The horror of a dress without a slip. I'd forgotten. My mom never let my sisters and I shave our legs or underarms because that's for whores, so we were hairy-legged in oversized pantyhose that bunched up in awkward places and got the slips so staticky the stupid skirts were always tangling up in our legs when we tried to walk. That's a horror I had also forgotten. Yet another case of a JW mom being expert on whores. According to my mom, it also included painting your nails, wearing anklets, anything clingy or that showed your figure or above the knee. I learned a trick recently for getting rid of staticky tights. Rub some lotion into your hands and then run your hands over the tights. Works amazingly. Too bad I didn't know that when I was 13 and the hem of my dress clung to my butt and you could see everything. As soon as Hillary Clinton came on the scene wearing professional pantsuits, I kicked my dresses to the curb and declared it good. I hated dresses so much. We had static guard in the bathroom at our Kingdom Hall, but then the sister with scent allergies, quote unquote, couldn't attend because chemicals. Oh, such a vivid horror. And imagine that on a hot day in a car group. Vinyl seats in our 70s station wagon midsummer with no air conditioning. It isn't just swamp ass, it's everything from the waist down. Driving down a gravel road in service, rural area, kicks up a lot of dust. So you roll the windows up while the car is on gravel, and then put them all the way down and go fast every time you come to a paved bit of highway. A sleeveless dress was out of the question, plus it'd show sweaty, hairy armpits, so you're in a high-neck dress, dark in color so the sweat can't turn it transparent. God help the whores walking around with their bra visible. With sleeves that extend to just above the elbow if you're lucky. And you're packed in a car, or sometimes one of the service group's van or old Suburban. The brothers were wearing suits and a cotton undershirt under their dress shirt. It was like traveling inside a gym sock. I remember this. I hated stockings so much I ripped a few pair, quote-unquote, by accident. My mother took the money to pay for new stockings out of my allowance. I hated those things with a passion. I found one of those little triangle things to go over your chest in case a top showed anything below my throat. God forbid my teen self stumble one of the mature brothers. Puke. Such a gross group of old dudes. So happy I'll never have to pander to them ever again. I developed early, and my aunts definitely let me know that before I was aware of it myself. By 13, I had learned to wear matching camisoles under any shirt, whether it was V-neck or not, because I couldn't lean without potentially stumbling somebody somewhere, it would have seemed. Even then, at a book study at someone's home, a sister yanked on my camisole and told me I was showing a little too much, laughing and making this weird eye contact with the other older ladies there. Her hand went into said cleavage to do that, but I was the problem. So effing weird looking back. But at the time, of course, I felt mortified and ashamed of my own body just existing. Where the heck does anyone get the entitlement that they can actually touch you anywhere without permission? They have no boundaries. When I was 25, I had a sister in the congregation reach over and button up a button on my shirt because she thought it was too low. Who the F did she think she was? I wish my 44-year-old self could go back and stand up for my child, teen, and young adult self. I've often wished the same thing. Being counseled by a sister, as other sisters were concerned about their husbands looking at me due to my clothing. They effing should have been concerned. I was 14. I was visiting with an older pioneer sister and a Watchtower farm brother after a meeting when the sister looked alarmed and made a motion at me to check my blouse. When I looked down, I saw that my blouse had come unbuttoned and my bra and upper boob were plainly visible. I looked at the farm brother in horror, thinking that he must think I'm a whore. His face was beet red, like he was outraged. Oh my effing God. I had apparently repressed the number of old women that reached fully into my shirts to do that stuff growing up. Like probably at least 100 instances. Well, that's been a fun jaunt down memory lane. Need to take a DMT vacation or something to process that, lol. So when I was 13 going on 14, my family started going back to the meetings after being inactive for years. But at that time I was developing pretty quickly. Like at that age I was already a B. I was modest with the length of my dresses and skirts, and I tried my best with finding tops that covered me completely that didn't look bad. But I can't tell you how many times at that age the elders approached my parents to talk to me about being immodest. You couldn't see anything if I was standing, but if I bent over to pick up my stuff, my shirt would flap open just a little, where you'd barely see anything. I ended up having to wear dress suits to appease everyone. After I'd been out for 5-ish years, I tried on a bunch of old dresses at my parents' house and was like, ew, awkwardly long, super high neckline, kind of baggy, just a train wreck of trying to be modest. OMG, I remember that too. It was so uncomfortable and caused anxiety. What a great thing for teens to put even more pressure that people are looking at what you wear. It's so horrible. That's a whole class of therapy in itself right there. Sure is. Had an 80-year-old brother pull my dad aside and scold him about me being a distraction to the good brothers like himself when I'd come in, quote, with my tits out, unquote. I was 15 and my father took his side. That's when I had to start with the dumbass cloth thing. So effed up. I was taken into the back room with my dad when I was 16 with a similar complaint. WTF. Yeah, and good brother that he was, my dad didn't just say like, what the F is wrong with you creeping on my still child daughter? But he didn't say anything when my sister was told at 12 years old that she needed to be baptized because once Jehovah had his name on her, then the brothers in the hall would treat her with more respect and less sexual aggression. To a 12-year-old. OMG. I actually made one 2 years ago in modifying a cheap, ill-fitting dress to wear at a wedding. I made a little panel out of the leftover fabric to cover my cleavage. Surprisingly, I ended up not wearing it, but it felt like a very prudent thing to make at the time. It felt so good to throw away those stupid dress skirt slips. It also felt good to show cleavage without the dirty looks from my mother. It's so great to be free. I'd forgotten this. My mother taught me to sew a small fishing weight to the hem of a slip and one to the hem of the dress itself or skirt so that it wouldn't flap up in wind, because heaven forbid a man saw the inside of a skirt hem or a glimpse of slip and be stumbled. These days I buy a dress or skirt and that's it. I like it, it fits, I wear it. We had a sister I can see through your dress accuser who policed and enforced double slips. God forbid you might learn women have legs under multiple layers of naughty bits shields. Add on tights for an extra layer of hell. The irony is that I would have preferred pants anyway, but that was a complete no-no, of course. Exact same line said to me. I had some random old man come up to me at a convention. I hadn't been to a meeting in about a year, and I never went back after that. I was embarrassed as I'd tried really hard to wear something quote-unquote appropriate, but also furious, as just legs. I had the dubious honor of being pulled in front of a judicial committee for wearing a skirt that showed my knees. It was directly at my knee line. I was 15 years old, tall, 5'9", high-waisted, and to find skirts that fit was outside our budget, so I made do. That time I had grown between seasons, so it was shorter than normal. I was talked to by two elders about my quote-unquote figure since I had curves and couldn't quote-unquote hide it, lol. My boobs grew in early. I was 15 with a 24-year-old and then a 76-year-old widower when I was 17 and a 44-year-old only child when I was 20 who all asked me to marry them. Creepy. Curvy curse. My pioneer partner had a butt and she was counseled on her tight skirts, which were long but hugged her butt and she couldn't help it. I felt like saying, "I'm sorry, I don't look like a man and have a penis." I wish I could go back in time and say that. I went out to San Francisco to visit a friend, and at the book study party, the book study conductor took his hand and ran it from right below my armpit down to my thigh. I was getting a piece of cake in the kitchen. I just froze. I was so glad I was going home the next day. Ew, I was 22. My dad would have me sit and make sure my dress or skirt went completely over my entire knee. Stand in front of a window so nothing was see-through. So embarrassing. Once I was watching a contribution box at an assembly, and a brother I never met before came up and told me to put my jacket over my legs because my knees showed a little when I sat. I was 15. He was like 50. I was so humiliated and felt so objectified. Didn't know that was what it was then. I spent so long looking for something cute and modest and felt so good about how I looked for once. I was always curvy and it was a real challenge. I was devastated. I had to laugh. They went through my elder father-in-law at that time, who told my now ex-husband to talk to me. It was an exact skirt like this picture, but it came down just below the bottom of the knee. This was in the late 80s. When I sat down, a brother noticed it rode up to the mid-knee, and they told the elders I was being too sexy. I felt so demeaned and hurt as a woman that they actually had the nerve to tell me I was giving the men in the congregation bad thoughts. To this day, I have fabric aversions if clothes feel too much like meeting clothes. Me too. I actually feel unsafe and stiff in all types of pantyhose and dress or skirt combinations. I always thought it was strange how exposed I felt in a dress. I felt vulnerable with nothing protecting my nether regions. Yeah, it's so contradictory. Like, if you really want me to be modest, then let me wear pants. Pants cover more skin. I too have a collection of camisoles, slips, and tights. And yep, I remember feeling judged despite the massive effort and self-repression exerted to meet their impossible and dreary standards of quote-unquote modesty. I actually like dresses still and tights with short skirts, but I'm finding few places to wear them. The slips are pretty much useless. The camis are cute alone with jeans, lol. Some dresses worked for office wear, but happily I'm working from home permanently now. My boyfriend asked me if I ever missed anything about this religion, and I said, dressing up, but then immediately took it back after remembering how the stress of being judged stole the joy from me. I found a tiny slip I forced my daughter to wear. It was so cute, but so horrible all at once. She'll never get her childhood back. It's hard to let that go. I feel like all these constant admonishments to women and girls about their dress is grooming. It's setting them up to take the blame when they're sexually assaulted or raped. It makes it easier for the elders to then say, well, what part of this do you take responsibility for? What could you have done differently? This can't be overlooked. It's a culture where the entire burden of preventing abuses is shouldered on the victim. It's all your fault. You prevent or cause your destruction in Jehovah's eyes. I remember the slips. I stopped wearing them in the late 80s. Then there was that one year for the district convention I decided to stop wearing pantyhose with a dress to the knee. Scandalous. I gave a whole closet away after I left. I didn't mind the slips or the pantyhose because I'm from Finland, and for 2/3 of the year there, you are happy to have an extra layer on you. In fact, to school, I used to wear 2 to 3 layers of old pantyhose under my jeans just for warmth. It was my thrifty long johns, lol. That having been said, the constant, am I showing too much versus do I look nice enough to respect the occasion of worshiping God was a real thing. I was not an early developer, so I had no cleavage to speak of while in the org. I escaped that scrutiny. Neckline in general and the length of skirts and dresses were still an issue, though. Oh, and the tightness of things, though the rules seemed to be a bit different between the elders' kids and the rest of us. I remember one time an elderly savage sister went to the book study with pants, suit pants for women, because it was negative 30 degrees, and it was the most exciting meeting to watch the elders squirm in their seats. She never did it again, so I guess she got told off, even though she argumented that it is dangerous for women to be in such cold weather in pantyhoses and skirts. The same elder said to my face that I have to start minding how I dress since I am obviously turning into a woman. I was 12 years old. I gave every dress, skirt, blouse, and high heel that I owned to Goodwill, and gave my jewelry away. 'Cause honestly, I dressed like a tomboy, and all of that made me so uncomfortable. I felt like a fraud, 'cause you don't have to wear all of that to be feminine. I was counseled for dressing too feminine. They're never happy unless we're miserable. Fellow tomboy here. As a child for a time, I wanted to be a boy. I hated the women's attire so much. Insisted on dressing in boys' clothes any time I wasn't at a meeting. I got so much negative attention for my choices either way. It was awful. I live in Florida, and the sun could never shine through your skirt to reveal that your legs have a space between them and move under your skirt. As an adult, I noticed this before waking up. I pretty much live in boho, flowy, airy shirts, so I usually do wear a lower cut shape or cami underneath. Well, when I leaned down to pick anything up, my right hand automatically went onto my chest to flatten my shirt. It never clicked that I was doing it at home until my husband asked why I was hiding myself. Then I thought about it. I was conditioned to always make sure that no part of my breasts ever came to light, not even a peep covered with a cami. I even did it at home. Yes, I noticed myself doing this too. Any sign of cleavage showing, and I'm still uncomfortable, thinking I'm being too showy and not modest. It's a hard habit to break after years. I just started getting my Goodwill bag together last week. Cannot wait to buy fashionable clothes. My mom used to force me to wear slips even if the fabric was thick. She once said to that as a reply, "Yes, but then if someone sees the slip, even though the dress is safe, they will see you're doing your part." Like, what? Even worse for those of us female to male transgender. Trans woman here, I feel your pain from the other side. I hated wearing suits. The amount of envy I'd get seeing all the sisters wearing nice stuff when I was stuck wearing a dull gray suit was heartbreaking for me every time. Used to try to mitigate it with colorful shirts and ties, but it always felt awful anyway. I have this really nice black asymmetrical dress sitting in a box from my witness days. I was so excited for this dress, and I would still be if there wasn't an extra 4 inches of fabric awkwardly sewn to the bottom of it. The delight of throwing out all the ugly dresses, shirts, and skirts that were appropriate. I was so glad I didn't have to dress like a 70-year-old ever again, at least before I turned 70. I'd forgotten about coming out of the toilet and walking down the middle of a packed Kingdom Hall with my skirt accidentally tucked into the back of my tights or pantyhose. I don't miss that. You know we understand. I remember being chastised for not wearing pantyhose. I was taught by my Bible teacher about girdles to decrease jiggle when I walked. I had slips for any length of skirt. These garments are not bad, it's just that for many of us XJW women, they represent the struggle to appear as pure as possible. One time when out in service, I was working with an older sister, and her slip lost its elasticity and fell to the ground as we walked up the steps, shaking my head. From that day forth, I always made sure my slips were in good shape, lol. I can so relate to this. One of the best events of my life was tossing slips and quote-unquote meeting clothes. This is an unpleasant trip down memory lane. Slips, off-colored stockings, and those silly cami cleavage covers. My grandmother was so obsessed with all of it. Even if I managed to pass my parents' approval, it was always, "You don't have a slip on." "I do." "Girl, I know you don't have panties on under there." "Why are you looking that hard, first of all?" "Why do you have all that titty meat out?" And some elderette always had some slick jab. The sheer memory of constant body/attire policing is exhausting. And what do JWs have against dress slacks? In my humble opinion, if attire would be suitable for a professional business meeting, it's good enough for the Kingdom Hall. I donated all my dresses to the thrift shop. I refused to wear one ever again. The only time I was counseled was when I wore a denim skirt, because denim has always been a sign of evil. I was constantly counseled for my dress and grooming. One time while I was married, an elder approached me and said, "Wow, you actually look like a wife today." I'll never forget that. I had a brother comment once about my heels. He said he always enjoyed looking at a woman who was all quote-unquote jacked up and ready to go. I never wore heels after that day. Thank God I've lost all track of a slip. I'm short, so they always slid down. How embarrassing. Also, my panty lines didn't show, or heaven forbid the light hit my skirt in the wrong way and was see-through for a second. I remember my auntie buying me a dress, then after I tried it on, we had to go out shopping for underskirts and tops. I loved being 12. Amen, sister. I had to put on a pair of pantyhose a couple of months ago. The trauma was overwhelming. No joke, hadn't put those nasty things on for 3 years. One time, my dad made me wear one of my stepmom's dresses that was obviously way too big and not appropriate for a 10-year-old, all because my dress hit the top of my knees and didn't cover them. It makes me laugh thinking about it now. Thank God I never have to deal with that again. Yes, I remember slips. When I was a teenager and still living at home, I got dressed for a convention and my mom asked me if I was wearing a slip under my dress. I told her I wasn't because it wasn't remotely see-through, and my dad asked me if I was a whore because only whores wear dresses without slips apparently. I was 15. I used to hate it when I'd pick out a skirt and Mom would be like, "That'll be fine with a petticoat." And I'd be like, more static nightmares. Back when I was studying, my leader took me to my town's used clothing store for a couple of suitably long dresses and to Walmart for a slip. I don't think I owned any other dresses at the time. Did anyone else have anxiety when you had a part on the stage? Skirt had to be perfect length when I sat down at the table. Or when standing up, can't see through the dress. I hated it. Never mind my social anxiety on top of those fears, lol. Shout out to my mom who bought me ugly AF floral print dresses and thick opaque tights to wear for preaching, even though it was 95 degrees in summer in the South. OMFG, memory unlocked. This whole thread is hilarious and sad, and the sisterhood is fantastic. Thanks for the post, truly. Wow. And this would probably be good for the last comment. Man, fuck slips. Well, hopefully this wasn't too traumatic for people listening to this video. Anyways, do you have your own stories about your dress or grooming being policed and monitored when you were a witness? Share it in the comments below. Hey, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like, and we'll catch you in the next video.